Nearly 5 decades later, the Hardy Boys/Nancy Drew Mysteries still holds a special place in television history. But behind the camera, its casts were far darker than anything written in the script. From devastating love scandals to shocking deaths, you won't believe where they are now in 2026. William Schollert as Carson Drew. William Joseph Schollert was born on July 6, 1922, in Los Angeles, California. At 55 years old, he played Carson Drew, the principled, protective father of Nancy Drew in The Hardy Boys/Nancy Drew Mysteries. His calm authority made the cases feel real, like the danger had consequences inside a family. That steady TV dad energy was forged under pressure. Growing up with a father who was a powerful drama critic and a mother who wrote and hosted on radio meant art was his expectation. He studied at UCLA, then World War II interrupted everything when he became an Army Air Corps fighter pilot, returning to finish school with a different kind of discipline. In the years that followed, he built his name through constant work, from The Patty Duke Show to his sharp guest role on Star Trek as Nils Barris. Then he built a home that lasted when Hollywood rarely does. In 1949, he married actress Leah Wagner, and they stayed together until her death in 2015, raising 4 sons while his career kept moving across decades. When Leah died, the timing felt cruel. The woman who had survived the entire journey was suddenly gone, and the silence afterward was louder than any applause he ever received. Age didn't soften his body the way it softened his voice. In his later years, he spoke about suffering from peripheral neuropathy, losing stability in his legs, and relying on braces, a walker, and often a wheelchair to get through daily life. The condition quietly narrowed his world, turning simple movement into a calculation. He still appeared on screen into the 2010s, but every step carried the feeling of a man negotiating with time. Sadly, he died at 93 on May 8, 2016, at his home in Pacific Palisades, from natural causes. With an estimated net worth of about $2 million earned across a lifetime of steady work, he left behind something rarer than wealth, a reputation for decency in an industry that rewards noise. And the heartbreak lands hardest in one detail. His greatest partnership ended in 2015, and he followed her only months later, as if his body finally admitted it didn't want to keep going alone. Ed Gilbert as Fenton Hardy. Ed Gilbert was born on June 29, 1931 in Chicago, Illinois. At 46 years old, he played Fenton Hardy, the wise and authoritative father of the Hardy Boys in the Hardy Boys/Nancy Drew Mysteries. His grounded presence added maturity and credibility to the youthful mystery-driven series. His path to acting was layered and unconventional. A graduate of the University of Chicago and a veteran of the Korean War, Gilbert combined intellect with discipline. Throughout the 1960s, he appeared in television dramas such as Combat and Mannix, steadily building experience before transitioning more heavily into voice acting. That shift demanded adaptability, as he learned to express depth and power through voice alone rather than physical performance. Marriage brought stability. He shared his life with his wife Virginia and their daughter Dorian. While his on-screen roles were limited, his voice became unmistakable in animation, from Blitzwing in the Transformers to Baloo in Disney's Tailspin. To perfect Baloo's voice, he studied archival recordings for hours, demonstrating meticulous dedication that defined his career. In the late 1990s, Gilbert battled lung cancer, a diagnosis that steadily weakened him. The illness progressed quietly until it claimed his life on May 8, 1999, at his home in Beverly Hills. Despite his declining health, his voice work remained influential, echoing through beloved animated series. Finally, he died at the age of 67 on May 8, 1999, from lung cancer. He was laid to rest at Eternal Valley Memorial Park in Newhall, California. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million earned through decades of acting and voice performance, he left behind not tabloid headlines, but characters that continue to resonate with audiences long after his passing. Shaun Cassidy as Joe Hardy. Shaun Paul Cassidy was born on September 27, 1958, in Los Angeles, California. At 19 years old, he played Joe Hardy, the charming and daring younger detective in the Hardy Boys/Nancy Drew Mysteries. His presence electrified the series and helped turn it into a cultural obsession among teenagers. That sudden fame stood in sharp contrast to the tension at home. Shaun grew up in a household ruled by high expectations, the son of Shirley Jones and Jack Cassidy. His father's volatile personality and eventual death in a devastating house fire in 1976 left an emotional fracture that never fully healed. So, he was thrust into stardom, balancing filming with a booming music career that included the multi-platinum album Shaun Cassidy and the hit Da Do Ron Ron. Success did not protect his marriages. He wed Ann Pennington in 1979, and though they had 2 children, the relationship unraveled in 1993 under pressure and growing distance. In 1995, he married actress Susan Diol. That union also ended in 2003, leaving him to navigate divorce while developing creative projects that would evolve into American Gothic. Stability finally came with producer Tracy Lynn Turner in 2004, and together they built a large blended family. The collapse of his teen idol image in the 1980s forced him to rebuild from the ground up. He stepped away from pop stardom and focused on writing and producing, creating series such as American Gothic, Roar, and later contributing to New Amsterdam. Reinvention became his strategy, proving that his talent extended far beyond the screaming crowds of the late 1970s. In 2026, Shaun Cassidy is 68 years old and remains active as a writer and producer, occasionally returning to the stage for intimate performances. With an estimated net worth of around $10 million earned through music, acting, and television production, he lives far from the frenzy that once defined him. Parker Stevenson as Frank Hardy. Richard Stevenson. Parker Jr. was born on June 4, 1952, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. At 25 years old, he played Frank Hardy, the steady, analytical older brother in the Hardy Boys/Nancy Drew Mysteries. His calm authority grounded the show and gave the Hardy brothers their balance. Behind that composed image was a childhood shaped by early exposure to performance. His mother, actress Sarah Mead, brought him to auditions as a child, introducing him to the industry before he had chosen it for himself. Though he studied architecture at Princeton University, acting gradually took precedence after roles in A Separate Peace and Lifeguard opened professional doors. The decision to leave a conventional career path for Hollywood demanded risk, discipline, and resilience. Marriage brought both hope and public scrutiny. In 1983, he married actress Kirstie Alley, and they adopted 2 children. Their partnership extended into shared projects like North and South, yet increasing pressure and diverging paths led to divorce in 1997. During that period, Stevenson continued appearing in major television series including Baywatch and Melrose Place, maintaining professional visibility while rebuilding stability in his personal life. Years later, he married Lisa Shaun in 2018 and embraced a quieter chapter. As the television landscape changed, Stevenson expanded his creative focus. Acting gradually shared space with photography, a craft he had pursued since youth. Exhibiting his work and developing a refined visual style allowed him to step beyond typecasting and define success on his own terms. In 2026, Parker Stevenson is 74 years old and continues to balance occasional acting roles with professional photography. His estimated net worth of about $10 million reflects decades of steady work in television and film. Jack Kelly as Harry Hammond. Jack Kelly was born on September 16, 1927, in New York City. At 50 years old, he played Harry Hammond, a hard-edged, authoritative figure in the Hardy Boys/Nancy Drew Mysteries. His presence added adult tension to a world of young detectives, like trouble had a face that could actually win. He didn't grow up with a normal childhood. He grew up with stage lights. Born into a prominent theatrical family, he was pushed toward performance early, and the camera became routine while other kids were still learning what routine even meant. World War II arrived and he served in the U.S. Army Air Corps, then returned to the industry with a sharper, more restless edge. When Maverick hit, his Bart Maverick became a TV legend. His marriages carried the same tension as his career, charm on the surface, stress underneath. He married actress Mae Wynn, Donna Lee Hickey, in 1956, and the relationship collapsed into divorce in 1964 after years of conflict that spilled into court statements. Later, he married Joanne Smith in 1969, and they had a daughter, Nicole, trying to build a steadier home while his work shifted in unpredictable ways. Later, he tried to reinvent himself, then how quickly his body stopped the plan. He leaned into business, formed a real estate structure, and entered city government, eventually serving as a councilman and then mayor. It looked like a second act with control, status, and stability. Then the health scares arrived like a brutal edit. On April 28, 1992, he suffered a heart attack, and the warning didn't last long enough to become a comeback story. Jack Kelly died at 65 on November 7, 1992, after a stroke at Humana Hospital in Huntington Beach, California. With an estimated net worth around $5 million tied to decades of acting plus real estate and politics, the ending still feels unsettling. Because he wasn't fading out in the past, he was still rebuilding. One year he's selling the idea of Maverick solving problems in City Hall, and months later, he's go. Pamela Sue Martin as Nancy Drew. Pamela. Sue Martin was born on January 5, 1953, in Westport, Connecticut. At 24 years old, she played Nancy Drew, the fearless and intelligent young detective in the Hardy Boys / Nancy Drew Mysteries. Her performance gave the series a sharp, independent female presence and turned her into a teenage icon almost overnight. The spotlight came early and fast. As a teenager, she left the stability of home to model in New York. By 19, she was already on the big screen in The Poseidon Adventure, followed by films like Buster and Billy, proving she could command attention beyond television. Yet the transition from small-town graduate to Hollywood actress demanded resilience, forcing her to navigate adult expectations. Marriage became another battlefield. She first married Charles Gates in 1975, divorcing in 1979. A second marriage to Jorge Brusque ended within 2 years, followed by a 5-year union with Manuel Rojas. In 1990, she married Bruce Allen, and though they welcomed a son, that relationship also ended in 1998. These repeated divorces unfolded while she balanced demanding roles such as Fallon Carrington in Dynasty, where shifting scripts and intense production schedules heightened personal strain even as she won the Bambi Award in 1984. Behind the glamour, Martin faced a painful health struggle with interstitial cystitis, a chronic bladder condition that brings recurring pain and fatigue. The illness required lifestyle adjustments and quiet endurance, even as she pursued creative projects and environmental activism. Her advocacy for ocean preservation and wildlife causes reflected a determination to channel adversity into purpose. Today, Pamela Sue Martin is 73 years old. She lives a quieter life, focusing on writing, producing, and environmental causes, stepping away from the relentless glare of mainstream fame. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million earned through decades of acting and production work, she stands as a figure who survived both Hollywood's intensity and personal upheaval, emerging defined not by scandal, but by persistence. Susan Buckner as George Feain. Susan Buckner was born on January 28, 1952, in Seattle, Washington. At 25 years old, she played George Feain in the Hardy Boys / Nancy Drew Mysteries, adding warmth and spirited energy to the ensemble. Her presence strengthened the dynamic around Nancy Drew, giving the series youthful vibrancy. Her early years were defined by competition and performance. Crowned Miss Washington in 1971 and a top 10 finalist at Miss America 1972, she entered show business carrying the expectations attached to beauty titles. The discipline of pageants led to dance and television appearances on programs like The Dean Martin Show and The Sonny and Cher Show, building a resume before Hollywood offered her breakout visibility. Then came Grease in 1978, where she played Patty Simcox, the cheerleader whose bright smile contrasted with the film's rebellious edge. The success of that blockbuster secured her a place in pop culture, followed by appearances in projects like Police Academy 6. Yet at the height of recognition, she stepped back, choosing marriage to Michael R. Josephs and raising their 2 children over chasing further fame. The industry that had once celebrated her gradually moved on, but she did not regret the pivot toward family and teaching dance. Her later years were lived away from Hollywood headlines. On May 2, 2024, Susan Buckner died in Miami, Florida, at the age of 72. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million from acting and dance instruction, Susan Buckner left behind a legacy tied to both teen mystery television and one of the most iconic musicals in film history. Lisa Isilbacher as Cali Shaw. Lisa Marie Isilbacher was born on May 5, 1957, in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. At 20 years old, she played Cali Shaw, the smart, grounded girl pulled into danger around the Hardy Boys cases in the Hardy Boys/Nancy Drew mysteries. Her role added a human, emotional stake to the mysteries, making the threats feel closer and more personal. That on-screen confidence came from a childhood that never stayed still. Her father worked as an Aramco executive, and the family split their time across Saudi Arabia, France, Germany, and Switzerland before finally relocating to Beverly Hills in the early 1960s. Lisa grew up learning how to adapt fast, fit in faster, and stay composed while everything around her changed. She didn't train in an acting school. Her mother coached her at home, and Lisa entered the industry young, appearing on shows like My Three Sons and Gunsmoke, then later stepping into darker, more intense material, such as the TV movie Bad Ronald alongside her sister Cindy. Her private life took a steadier path than her early career. In 1988, she married director and photographer Bradford May, and the marriage held while her acting opportunities shifted in unpredictable ways. As she tried to move from promising young TV face into lasting adult roles, she had to fight for serious parts that didn't reduce her to a supporting presence. Even so, she broke through in the 1980s with 2 unforgettable films, An Officer and a Gentleman and Beverly Hills Cop. Then the industry's pace changed, and so did her position inside it. After years of working non-stop, she gradually stepped away from the spotlight, choosing distance over reinvention in public view. The shock is how quickly a face that felt everywhere in the 1980s could become almost invisible. In 2026, Lisa Isilbacher is 69 years old. She lives privately and is best known today for the lasting imprint of her 1980s roles, especially Beverly Hills Cop, while keeping her personal life largely out of public reach. With an estimated net worth of about $5 million from decades of acting, her story lands like a cliffhanger. Gene Racy as George Feain. Gene Racy was born on September 19, 1954, in San Francisco, California. At 22 years old, she played George Feain, Nancy Drew's tough, loyal best friend in the Hardy Boys/Nancy Drew mysteries. Her energy gave Nancy's world a sharper edge, like the danger wasn't faced alone but confronted as a team. Before television recognition, she built herself through discipline, not luck. She studied at the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco on scholarship, performing serious stage work like Cyrano de Bergerac before moving to Los Angeles and landing film opportunities such as The Hindenburg, 1975, and Roller Coaster. She wasn't marketed as a star. Her career became a different kind of endurance test. While many expected TV exposure to open doors, Hollywood kept offering her fragments, earning money to pay bills at home. She became the face of hundreds of national commercials, including a long run as Jill in Union 76 ads for a decade. The tension became a dramatic downfall. Instead of disappearing, she learned to re-enter on her own terms. Years later, she returned in projects that carried a darker bite, like the 2011 short film Man Who Sold the World, then resurfaced again in 2018 in the acclaimed web series Break a Hip, playing Brenda DiCarlo, a ruthless nursing home director written specifically for her. The shock is the timing. After decades of being treated as almost, she suddenly showed up with a role that proved she could still cut deep. Now Jean Racy is 72 years old. She continues to work selectively, choosing roles that suit her voice and presence rather than chasing the old machine of constant casting calls. With an estimated net worth of about $1 million built through acting and long-running commercial work, her story feels like a quiet revenge, because she didn't win by being crowned, she won by refusing to vanish. Janet Julian as Nancy Drew. Janet Louise Johnson was born on July 10, 1959, in North Hollywood, California. At 19 years old, she played Nancy Drew, the determined young sleuth who stepped into the role in Season 2 of The Hardy Boys/Nancy Drew Mysteries in 1978. Taking over such an iconic character instantly placed her under scrutiny and changed the tone of the series. The transition from high school graduate to television lead happened almost overnight. Discovered while still young, she moved from modeling commercials to major TV exposure, carrying expectations that most teenagers never face. Guest appearances on shows like Battlestar Galactica and later roles in Falcon Crest showed range, yet the industry often kept her in youthful roles that limited her growth. Her marriage became the center of stability amid that uncertainty. In 1990, she married Michael Lansbury, nephew of Angela Lansbury, and the couple built a life with 3 children. As acting roles slowed and typecasting persisted, she made a deliberate decision in 1995 to leave Hollywood and prioritize family. That choice, while steady and grounded, also meant stepping away from a career many believed was still rising. Instead of fading, she transformed. Janet turned toward education, becoming a respected parent educator, author, and podcast host. She founded classes, wrote books such as No Bad Kids, and built a following through her unruffled platform. The shift from television detective to child development advocate was unexpected, yet it revealed a different kind of influence. In 2026, Janet Julian is 67 years old. She continues teaching, writing, and hosting educational content on respectful parenting. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million earned through acting and her later educational work, her life reads like a surprising twist. The young detective who once solved mysteries on screen now helps families navigate the far more complex mysteries of real life. Anne Lockheart as Sarah Masters. Anne Kathleen. Lockheart was born on September 6, 1953, in New York City. At 24 years old, she played Sarah Masters, a poised and observant figure woven into the investigations of the Hardy Boys/Nancy Drew Mysteries. Her performance added quiet intelligence and emotional weight to the cases, grounding the youthful tension of the series. Growing up as the daughter of acclaimed actress June Lockheart meant the spotlight was never optional. Acting surrounded her from childhood, from uncredited appearances on Lassie to early television guest roles, while comparisons to her mother followed her into every audition. Determined to stand on her own, she built a resume through persistence, eventually breaking through as Lieutenant Sheba in Battlestar Galactica, a role that gave her strength, authority, and independence beyond the family name. Her marriage became both refuge and heartbreak. On December 24, 1986, she married Adam Carlisle Taylor, and together they welcomed 2 children, Carlisle and Zane. Stability seemed within reach, even as she continued steady work in television and voice acting, including projects like Disney's Tangled. Then, in June 1994, tragedy struck when her husband died in a motorcycle accident at just 27. The shock was devastating. Suddenly, she was not only an actress balancing work, but a widow raising 2 young children alone. Anne carried forward through discipline and resilience, working in theater, television, and education programs that supported young performers. She expanded into voice acting and stage productions, maintaining presence without chasing headlines. Today, Anne Lockheart is 73 years old and remains active in selective acting and community arts initiatives. With an estimated net worth of around $3 million earned through decades of television, film, and voice work, she stands as a woman who endured comparison, loss, and reinvention. Ed Burns as Hans Monton. Edward Byrne Breitenberger was born on July 30, 1932 in New York City. At 45 years old, he played Hans Monton in the Hardy Boys/Nancy Drew Mysteries, bringing seasoned intensity to the screen. His presence carried the weight of a man who had already lived through fame's rise and fall. His childhood was harsh and unstable. After his abusive alcoholic father died when Ed was 13, he dropped his surname and adopted Burns, reclaiming control over his identity. As a teenager, he hustled for survival, modeling and taking odd jobs before finding his way into acting. That hunger translated into his breakout role as Cookie in 77 Sunset Strip, where his comb-twirling coolness sparked a national teen craze and even produced the hit single, Cookie Cookie, Lend Me Your Comb. Fame, however, came with shadows. He married Asa Maynor in 1962, and they had a son, Logan, but the marriage ended in 1971. Typecasting trapped him in the Cookie image, and frustration with the studio system led to contract disputes and missed film opportunities. Drug addiction followed, quietly eroding the momentum he once held. In 1982, he achieved sobriety, rebuilding his life and later reintroducing himself to new audiences as Vince Fontaine in Grease, proving he could outlive his own legend. The later decades were quieter, but steadier. He worked intermittently in television and film, often leaning into self-aware roles that nodded to his past. The edge that once defined him softened into reflection, and he spoke openly about the cost of early fame and addiction. Ed Burns died at 87 on January 8, 2020, at his home in Santa Monica from natural causes. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million from acting and music, he left behind more than a teen idol image. Nearly 5 decades have passed since the Hardy Boys/Nancy Drew Mysteries, 1977 to 1979, first captivated audiences with its young detectives and high-stakes adventures. So, when you look at the Hardy Boys/Nancy Drew Mysteries 1977 to 1979, then and now 2026, which transformation surprises you the most? If you enjoyed this journey from then to now, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your favorite cast member in the comments below. Which story surprised you the most?